Hello everyone, this is Christian on Exciton Interactive, and in this video we are going to create what I'm calling a responsive image tag helper. So we can see that's located on the screen here. So basically our tag will have some very easy to read, understand, I think easy to reason about attributes that will generate in the end a tag that looks like this thing here. It might be hard to read, still I've enlarged it as much as possible. We're going to basically be able to create an image tag which has, the alt. It'll have sizes which are formatted in the correct way. We'll have a source set and source and all that, so that we can easily create a, like I said, a responsive image tag on the page. Again, using a tag helper with properties that are very easy to read. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started here. So the code that I'm using for the layout, the examples and such, you can check them out in the article if you're interested in it. It's just user interface, so it's not important for this video. So we're going to create some tag helpers, and to have our tag helpers usable in our pages, we have to import them. So what I'm doing here is that there's a file within the pages folder. Pages, there's this one, the viewimports.cshtml file, which is this one here. What we need to do is to add a little line here. So add tag helpers, the star, all of them from our project, the web UI. You can see the tag helpers are coming from this Microsoft package from Microsoft. So we'll save that, and now we are able to include our tag helpers. The important part being, though, when we're dealing with this, is what I'm calling a responsive image tag helper. And I sort of wish it wasn't all in blue, but basically what we're attempting to make is this tag helper right now. So we have an image, we'll have an alt, we'll be able to specify sizes, source, and source set, so that the browser, you can see in the previous video when we talked about responsive images, so the browser will select an appropriate image based on the viewport of the user's device. And so I have a file that's inside of this. You can see by the namespace, the root of our project, there's a features folder, images, and inside of that I have this responsive image tag helper. Again, might be easy to see in the article, which of course there's a link to in the description below. And so this is what we're going to be creating here. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is to annotate our class, and the annotation is HTML target element, and we can pass in some properties to it. The first one being what we want to use for the name of the tag. So responsive image. So that would be what we have to type in the HTML, and next we specify an attributes property, which is basically a string, a comma separated string, and these are the things that we want to require to be there for our tag helper to work. So we're going to need an alt, an extension, something I call a source fragment, because it's not exactly the source, but it's definitely related to it, and sizes. Right, so basically what we're looking for, of course, we know what the alt is. The extension is just going to be the, extension for the image. Source fragment, basically the source fragment is going to be everything that leads up to the final dash, then there's a width and the extension, right? So just everything up to that part is what I'm going to call the source fragment. And then sizes, of course, in my case, so I've set it up so that this size, the breakpoint and the size of the image at the breakpoint are going to be the same. They don't necessarily need to be the same. You can do it differently, but for me, this is the way that I want it to work. So all I need is one sizes variable, which will just tell me the different sizes. We of course have to do our imports, and let's see if I get the right one here. Yep. Okay, and now what we need is our tag helper here to inherit from tag helper base class. And I'm going to copy these in. There's not much use in typing them myself. So what I have here is, so we have the alt, extension, source fragment, and sizes. I thought of a way to do it afterwards now. I think that we could do something other. For example, in the sizes, we need several. So I thought of a way to maybe get in an array, but we'll just take in a string. We'll do the same thing, basically a comma delineated string. And this HTML attribute or attribute name, so attribute on the properties, is a way that you specify what the name is for this particular thing. So for the alt, extension, and sizes, it's not really required because they're the same name. It'll take care of dealing with the capitalizing and whatnot. But source fragment here, you'd have to have it all one word if you wanted to not have the attribute name attribute here. But this way we can specify that it should be source-fragment in the HTML. And so that leaves us to doing something with all the information. And in that way we do an override on, does it help me out? Yeah, so we're going to override the process method. There is an async method, but we are not really, I would tend to use the async method when you read in the children information. So if your tag contained information, you wanted to put that back in the page, we would use the async method. In this case, we are not reading any information. Our tag is not going to contain any child or children elements. And I guess I need a void here. All right, so now this is process method, of course, is where we do all of the work. So we have our little example down here. What we do is we take the output and we can say that the tag name for our output is going to be img output dot, there's a tag mode, and we're going to say that that tag mode is start tag only for the image tag. And now we can add in stuff. So we can say attribute or output dot, there's an attributes property. We say add. We give it a string for the name of it and then the value, which is the alt. All right, now we have to do a little bit of work. So like I said, we're going to have our sizes come in as a comma separated string. And so we'll say var size strings equals sizes dot split on the comma. I guess we could use a character instead of string. All right, so now we have that, and so we need to use those image or the numbers, this 324, 80, 800. Those appear in different places, so in the sizes and inside the source set. And so what I'm going to do is create a couple of variables. We'll say source set is equal to new string array, and the size of it is size strings dot length. While we're at it, we're going to create another one, and I think I just called it sizes. All right, so now we'll do a for loop here. So we'll do for. Does it help me out? No. There we go. So for I, what did I say? It was size strings dot length. Perfect. And so our size is going to be size strings, and I will do source set I is equal to a template string. Oh, and we're missing something for a second. We'll come back to it. We'll say sizes I. So if I is, so there's a difference of it, right? We have max width, whatever the value is for the size, and then the last one, doesn't have it. So if we say that I is less than size strings dot length minus 1. So, oops, where's my equals? What we need is to say that it should also be this template string and otherwise a different template string. So that template string, we'll just grab one. This thing is, of course, the size. Perfect. Check the notes here, make sure everything's okay. And then the last one, of course, is just the size and pixels at the end. So now to deal with this thing here, this is going to come up again where we need to come up with the source set value. So basically what I need to do is construct from our source fragment the size and the extension to come up with this string here. Right? So what we're going to do is to create a little helper method and image source. So give me a string size and I'll give you the sort of source for it. And so that's going to be what we'll say is source fragment. So we'll have source fragment dash size. We need our little w for the width there, and because that'll be in the picture source, and we need the extension. Okay, so now we come back up here and we can say that in the source set, to create that, what we need is the image source, and we pass in the size for it. We need a space here, and we need the size and a W. So that creates, sort of, for instance, this string right here. All right? And now we can start adding these to our output tag. So we'll say output.attributes.add sizes, and sizes, what we need is string.join. We'll use a comma, so because if we look here, this is sizes is one string, is separated by commas, so we'll join it, commas and sizes. Perfect. Output.attributes.add, and the next one I did was the source. And the source is just going to be, so we need to tell it sort of the default one. So this is a default one that will be shown if the browser does not support the source set attribute. And so what I'm going to use is basically the smallest image, right? Because if for whatever reason, if the browser is not going to support this source set, it's probably some, mobile browser. So I think these are basically supported by all the current modern desktop browsers. So if we put in the larger image, when it gets sort of compressed down because of the viewport, it's very possible to be unreadable. So we'll just put in size strings, the 0th element of that, and that's all I needed for that one. So the fact that I'm using the 0th element or the first element is implicitly, I know, or I'm expecting that when we write the sizes in the tag that we have in the HTML, that the sizes are going to be listed in ascending order only. So we just keep that in mind when I'm not sure why we do it any other way, but this code is being written with that requirement in mind. And then we need output.attributes.add, and we need the source set. And it's the same thing, string.join. A comma, not a C, and the source set that we created. All right, so if we save that, that should create the tag the way that we are wanting it to. And we're coming back over to this page, user interface page here. And I have the different sizes, area for it. And what I want is div, can I get away with this? Div dot, these are, the outside stuff is basically just, for me, my particular use case, because I'm planning on using this stuff, I'm going to do it as close as I can to what will actually end up being used. So you can basically ignore this part of it, except it does give me a chance to tell, that's where the image came from that we're using. Same images from previous videos. All right, so now we're ready to go. So if we remember back in our tag helper that our tag name is supposed to be responsive image. And there's a lot of things that I like about Visual Studio Code, and this particular one, if I was using Visual Studio, we would get some IntelliSense help as to what I'm supposed to put for these attributes here. But, we'll forego that for now. So we have a source fragment property. And that is going to be images slash, so this is a location of the images in the www root folder. And the name of the image is woman, balloon, chair, dark. So we've got that. Scroll back over and ignore that. So where are we at? Source fragments done. So let's do sizes. So our sizes again is a string. In this case we'll use one that's 320, one that's 480, and one that's 800. Next up, the extension. That's equal to, in this case, just JPG. And last but not least, the alt, which probably by the time that I've copied and pasted that, I could have just typed it in anyway. All right, now with fingers crossed, we should be able to save that. If I refresh the browser over here, we have our image. And we'll come down here and see if I can deal with this stuff. It's probably still hard to read. If we look at this image, so we have all of our things. We have the alt, sizes, source set. So that should mean that if we check out the network, I hate this network tab or the network thing here because you cannot get it to, these headers are not so that I can drag and make one larger than the others. So what I care about is the file. And if you get rid of all of them and just leave the file, it actually just truncates it as small, even smaller, so I can't see it anyway. So at this plate, we're at 488 pixels. We've downloaded the 800 width image. Less than 80, we've got the 480 image. And less than 320, we've got the 320 image. So all of that appears to be working correctly. All right, so that's good. Now, the thing is that so I just did a previous video on lazy loading, and I want these images to be able to be lazy loaded, and actually, point of fact, I want it to be default to lazy loading. So let's go back to our tag helper, and what I pointed out in the previous video, just to get them to be lazy loaded, the modifications that we need to make is just to add a class of lazy load, and we need to take the source and source set attributes and data dash them, right? So let's come back up to our code here. And what we're going to do is to add another property here. And this one is going to go not there, sometimes unhelpful. So I'm going to add an attribute, lazy-load. Lazy load is going to be a nullable bool. And the reason I want nullable bool, of course, is like I said, I want to not to have to write anything else in the code, and it'll just default to being lazy loaded. For us to get that, we're going to help us out a little bit. Private bool is lazy loading, and that's just lazy load equals to null or lazy load dot value. So if it's null, we'll lazy load. If the value is true, or if it's not null and the value is true, we'll lazy load. The only time we won't is if the value is false. All right, so now back to our thing here. What we're going to need to do is to modify source and source set, right? So attribute is actually, or the sizes attribute is not changed in this. So let's just scroll down a little bit. So inside of here, we're going to say string source key, because I have no better name for it. Source set key, and now we'll say if lazy load. Let's do some work here, and we'll do else. It's not JavaScript, so is lazy load. If is lazy load, and what have I done? Oops. I guess in the code I said is lazy loaded. Got different things all over the place. So is lazy loaded. All right, so now what we want is the source key in this case. So we're lazy loading. Like I said, we need those to be data dash source. And we need source set key to be data dash source set. And while we're at it, output dot, there's a not yet add. There's an add class. Wonder if it'll help me now. Yep. So there's an add class property here, and we tell it what the property or the class is. Still going to complain because we need to tell it the encoder that we're going to use. HTML encoder, and then there's a default one we'll use, of course, in a different namespace. Perfect. And then we are having source key back to source set key, source set. All right, so now what we need is to update here. Instead of source, we need source key, and instead of source set key. Let's go ahead and save that. Again, do our finger crossing. So we return back to our page for the example. So this was the first one that we made for the responsive image. Like I said, this is going to default to lazy loading. So we're going to lazy load false for that one. And actually we should be able to see if we save that and refresh. Make this bigger again. Make this bigger. Probably still hard to read, but what I'm looking for is that if it had been lazy loaded, there should be a class that's added to it, and the source and source set data dash attributes would be present, so that we can be confident that there is no lazy loading going on. I'm going to go down here. I have a lazy loading section, which is going to load in 10 different images. We can see it. I'm not going to type it. We're just going to copy and paste. The only difference is, right, is that we have this not aligned OCD kicking in. So the source fragment here just includes a dash copy and the I to give me an integer on the end there. Otherwise, it's all the same. Let's go ahead and save that. We don't need to refresh. We just need to go to lazy loading. So we go to network. So what we have here, I can't see all of it. It's loading the 800 width image anyway, I think. Yeah. But what we can see there is that copy 1 through copy 5 are what has been loaded, and we have 10 copies on the, or 10 pictures or images on the page. So we can see that if we scroll down, we'll see it's some, well, okay, scroll on my own. So we'll see there's 6, 7, 8, 9, and the final one, number 10, down there at the bottom. So now we have the ability to lazy load those images. Of course, I said you can see the previous video on the actual coding to get that working. But we can see that to make this image tag, all we have to do is to write this bit with a few properties added onto it. They're fairly easy to read, to know, reason about what's going on. And inspect this element. If we look, that easy to read tag helper basically generates this gobbledygook. I wonder. We can see that, you know, got the alt, data source, source set, all of that, source sizes, all that gets added in. Like I said, much easier to read, much easier to use. If for whatever reason we change the package that's doing the lazy loading for the images, and that's all we'd have to do is modify the tag helper, and then suddenly everything would be working again. You know, we could modify it to be however we want. We don't have to go in and find all the image tags and update them and so on and so forth. So that takes care of sort of responsive, what I'm calling responsive image tag helper in this video. In the next video, we're going to deal with the, if we saw in the previous videos, there's also a case of dealing with higher pixel density displays. So show an image if it's DPR of 1 or 2 or 3. So we're going to create a DPR image tag helper in the next video. But as usual, if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below, and I will talk to you later. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video. I know that your time is valuable. If you liked the video, please subscribe to our channel and click the thumbs up button, as well as share the video with your friends. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below. And once again, thank you, and I will talk to you in the next video.